Hello, ladies, gentlemen, and everybody else who does not choose to identify. My name is David Cash. I'm here live in New York City at Samsung 837, brought to you by Spatial.io, the metaverse for culture. And I'm here for NFT Magazine, the definitive source of crypto art. And I'm joined today with one of my favorite NFT artists, Don Diablo. How are you doing today, Don?
Sleepy.
Oh, yeah. It has been a week. We're here at NFT NYC. You've been going nonstop, haven't you?
It's been a little crazy. It's like we also crammed it in between some dates in Canada as well as Miami, Boston. And
Got to get the North American dates in while you can.
Yeah. It's intense. It's intense.
Amazing. Well, I've been aware of your work for a while. We've gotten to chat a few times, but you have a career going back a long time, and I'd say the technology aspect of your work goes back a lot longer than your NFT work, dates back. So I'm curious if we could go a couple steps back before we talk about what's happening right now. When would you say that digital art began to really impact your life?
Well, I think actually already from an early age when I saw the first Star Wars, to be honest.
Absolutely.
And then I think when I was 17, I did my first music video, which was fully animated. I sort of began as a video director. I think I saved to create the video. I saved for maybe 18 months. I had 4 jobs because the record label wasn't going to pay for anything. It was like a whole political statement. If you look back at the video, it could actually still be an NFT right now. But yeah, I think that was the first thing where I was like, okay, I'm going to make like a full 3.5 minutes digitally animated, create a whole new world, actually a whole new metaverse. When I was 17. So
that's awesome. And for your creative process around that, did it start with the music and then you created a world to fit the music, or did you create the world and the music kind of simultaneously?
It's actually a good question. It's funny enough, it's actually it's quite often it's the other way around. I have an idea in my head for a video and a story, and then I make a song around that. So in this case, it was like that. The track was called Useless. You kind of see this world where everyone's the same, they're all moving in the same direction, they're all wearing the same clothes. I'm walking around as well, but I kind of, my head is a question mark. So it's a CGI question mark where sometimes turns into an exclamation mark. I'm trying to go the other way, but it's hard in this society where everyone's going in the same direction.
Yeah, that could totally be an NFT.
No, I was like, also the concept of history is nice when it's like over 20 years old and there's a story behind it and it's a part of your legacy. I think that's to me I think a lot of people are like, oh shit, I got to create an NFT now. Well, what's happening? There's a way here to be a part of this. But for me, it's like, no, it should really be about you and your personality and your story.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, you've had quite a career. You've done a whole bunch of things. I think one of the things I personally respect about you the most is that you kind of move between genres, and not just genres, but full mediums, just really like on a daily basis. Yeah. So most people know you as a musical artist. Now I'd say a lot of people listening to this podcast probably primarily know you as an NFT artist. When did that transition begin to happen? When did you really turn on to NFTs?
Well, I think I've always been. The thing is, before all. This whole sort of creative and cultural shift, you had to be one or the other, right? There wasn't that sort of thing where you could be that sort of plural creative artist. You could be making music, video.
Michelangelo, but hey, but it's not. Nobody thinks
in
about
a way,
it.
Like Andy Warhol came. He came from an advertisement. And he managed like the Velvet Underground. So he was in art. As well as music and everything in between, right? So, but I think that a time came where we all had to be pigeonholed, and so I kind of just chose the route of like, hey, am I going to go when I was young? So I have a degree in audiovisual journalism. I went to film school, but I was like, okay, what can I do by myself? Because when you're in film, it's a team effort. And my ambitions were high; they were big. I was just a kid in a small town in the east of the Netherlands, and I was like, cool. I need to work really hard to make this work. Music is probably going to be the best vehicle for me to have an international career, and that kind of worked out because it's a solo effort. I think when I was 15, 13, between 13 and 15, I found out you could make music with a computer. I didn't need a band because I was like, I tried to find a band. I was like, okay, somebody, who wants to play drums, who wants to play guitar. Couldn't find anyone. And then I saw this video. I was like, wow, you can make music with a computer. This is insane. So I bought an Atari, and just started to play around. I bought an Amiga. And from there on, the whole idea of what you can do with a computer just kind of like blew my mind. And then I was like, okay, it's better to do this by yourself because I, film and a lot of other disciplines you're very dependent on other people. And the great thing about electronic music was like, you can reinvent yourself over and over. So I think I had like 20 different names. One name I was creating chemical beats and hip hop, rock music, but also like hard gabber music,
under different aliases,
trance music, techno. Yeah, all under different aliases. One of the aliases was when I was 15, was like a 40-year-old guy from Detroit, and that's what you used to, that was the story in the back of the vinyl, and people were like, oh, I like this, I love this guy, Dave Mitchell. Wow, man, I love. It's just a spotty 50-year-old. Yeah. That's what it is. I think now with art, it's, as this goes for NFTs as well, it's not necessarily just about the art, it's about who is creating the art, right? It's about the story. And I think this was the first time in history for me as well where I had the opportunity to create a community and also to have a community back me, help me out after I helped them out, and we help each other out. And we created a whirlwind, a snowball that's rolling down the hill. And that was new, that was new. We could help each other, and we could tell a real story. When Clubhouse came up, people would listen for hours, to an actual story. There would be human conversations, and we would be really helping each other. That was something that was new.
And that's when NFTs really started to, I guess, be the vehicle of this independent.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Form. For me, it was like I was like, okay, I'm going back to school, right? I was in my house, inside, not touring. Friends were off doing other stuff. Usually, sometimes I didn't leave the house for 7 days. And I was just in Clubhouse in all of these rooms, just listening in, and for months on end. And at some point, someone said, "Are you Don Diablo?" They brought me on stage, and we started talking. And then, after being there with the community for a couple of months, they decided like, we're going to help you, and that's kind of how everything started rolling.
It's awesome. We've talked a little bit about these early days of NFTs quite a bit, but I think that something that's always important to mention, especially in this point in time, is where we are kind of in history. So I know that you were touring a ton, kind of nonstop, all the time, pre-pandemic, like right up until the pandemic, and then everything stopped. Yeah. Obviously, in terms of the world, but then I think a lot of us are kind of thinking. I mentioned Michelangelo in passing, but that's when I really believe that the digital renaissance kind of began. Yeah. This ability for us to start doing all of these different things because we all of a sudden had endless amounts of time. So I'm curious from your perspective, and it's a little bit of a leading question because I know a little bit of the answer, but I'm curious from your perspective what that transition was like from just being on tour to having this time to yourself, and I guess having to reevaluate what you wanted to do.
Oh, it opened my mind, because I think I slept generally like maybe 2 to 3 hours max for maybe 15 years straight. And
how many months of the year were you touring?
Non-stop.
Wow,
that's the difference between a band and an electronic musician. There's always a demand. You have to work on your fan base in Asia, your fan base in North America, South America, Middle America, Europe, Australia. Wow. It's nonstop. Then you have the online community. You make a weekly radio show that you spend a lot of time on. I run a record label. You have a clothing line, and then you need to make music, and the music needs to have a story. So there literally wasn't any time to even be in a relationship or see your friends or spend time with your family. It was just you were just out there, kind of like surviving. Then when the world came to a standstill, it was like, this is probably the forced sabbatical that I needed. And it was hard for me at first because I was like, sleep, how does that work again?
Am I supposed to do that?
Yeah. But a lot of the art that I'm making now comes from that, comes from the ideas that came from that. I've got a new piece that I created, which is basically it's a 24-hour flight, an airplane window, because it was really hard for me to sleep in a bed for so many days in a row.
You weren't used to it.
No, I'm not used to it, and I think for me that was such a change, that not having pressure, and also creating music again, not thinking about what are my fans gonna think, what will the record label think, what will my management think, what will the haters think. It was just kind of like I didn't need to think about, is it gonna stream well, is it gonna perform well at festivals or in the live circuit. It's more like, hey, I'm just gonna go back, like when I was first started making music, when I released my first record when I was 13. That, it's a time where you just create stuff without pressure.
Yeah. You make what you want to make.
You make what you want to make, but there's no goal. There's also no way to see a result. Now you see results, you're like, how many streams, how many views, how many likes, how many...
Did it sell well? Yeah.
Yeah. Did it sell? So there are no analytics. There's just a creative mind, and it feels like there are no limits. And I kind of just went back to being that kid. Yeah. And that was the best thing that could have happened to me. Like, I started feeling like shred of happiness again. It's like, oh shit, this is what it feels like. Yeah. Forgot about that, and then I was like, wow, this is kind of what I worked for and worked towards my whole life, trying to master all these disciplines of, editing video, creating digital art, as well as making sound and making music, making fashion, creating stories. I was like, I now have the opportunity, because usually you get the credit for one thing, right? People wouldn't know, like, oh, Don is also directing his own video. He's also doing the styling for the video. And he's also actually writing the press release. But that's kind of what it was like. And now it's like, oh, you can actually put that into one bowl, and, it would be considered to be art now. Yeah. And that is the real revolution for me that took place, next to all of the technical possibilities and opportunities. That now the perception of what an artist can be has changed, and that's really where it's like, wow, I really worked for this moment most of my life. I remember my ex-girlfriend. We were in the plane. I was in the plane. I was going to deliver my first piece that I sold to a collector in Dubai, and she rang me. She saw it on the news, because it, I think it broke the sales record at Super Rare at the time, and they were like, well, this is what you've been talking about, right. Like, because we broke up. She's like, I'm just, for all these years, I'm just looking at your back. You're just behind your computer, sitting there crafting away on something no one's gonna want, no one's interested in. What are you doing? And we need to be out there. We need to go on a holiday. You need to be out there creating, a social life. And she was very emotional. She was like, I can't believe all that stuff you talked about like 10 years ago is happening now. And you're ready for it.
Let's dig into that. So when you were initially creating that first piece and releasing that first piece, I know how much work you put into your NFTs, to your work in general. Where did that process start for you? And maybe just for the folks listening who may not be aware, like you said, PR, video, everything. I've experienced the process firsthand. Walk us through how that first one perhaps happened, if you're okay with that.
Yeah, I think also, like, for me, it was important that it wouldn't just be music, right? For me, music and sound is one part of what I do. So I really wanted to seize that opportunity of like creating the digital part as well as adding a physical part to it, because I've always loved creating physical things. I think also, like, it wasn't for me like, oh, I'm going to create NFTs. For me, it's more like I can finally share and sell my art on the blockchain.
Yeah, well, NFTs facilitate, any type of medium that couldn't otherwise be sold. Exactly. Now you can. So
that's exactly what it was. Like, everyone was like, how were you able to create all of these crazy, huge NFTs within like such a short amount of time? I was like,
I was waiting.
I already created them. Yeah. It wasn't like I was, oh snap, I need to now make an NFT. I mean, I think in 2017, created a coin, was doing all that, but I was touring so much. For me, it felt too financial. They were all like, there was just a shitload of people around me, like, you're going to make millions, hundreds of millions.
And it was a lot more, finance. It was very DeFi, I think.
Very DeFi. And to me, if there's ever a chance where I can dupe someone who believes in me or someone who supports me or is a fan, I was like, okay, I'm going to back off from this. We had all the publications. It was all out there on the internet. But to me, when it becomes too money driven, and I can't control what would happen to someone that I care about, that's kind of when I backed out and was like, okay, I'm gonna wait this out for a couple of years until it's less money driven and it's more creative. Obviously, people would say now like, hey, but you're selling seven figures
Yeah.
pieces of art, so it is money driven. But that's it's different because I mean, when it comes to something creative, sometimes even you something you worked for almost 20 years in the making, that has a value, and I think that it needs to be valued, and I think that's why I wanted to create something where my mom would be excited about NFTs.
Yeah.
That was always my goal. Like, she's not on the blockchain, she doesn't understand what minting means or any of the slang, but it would be like, hey, oh, you've built this cabinet and it's on a digital cartridge, this digital artwork, and you put the cartridge in and it pops up and you can put it in your living room.
It's just super cool.
Yeah, that's super cool. And it has sound, it has visual, there's a story. Like, this was created around a song that I worked on that I started when I was 19, and I never released because it felt like it didn't have a place in the world.
Right.
Like, and that to me was very symbolic because that's kind of what I felt like most of my life. Like, I didn't have a place in this world. People would say like, oh, you've been successful, but there's a difference between being successful and being happy, right? And also, what is success? For me, the bar has always been crazy high. Like, we never celebrate anything. Like, okay,
What's next?
what's next, right? And that was the bar for me as well here. Like, I really wanted to make my mark. I really wanted to sort of carve out a unique space for me within the NFT world, within the digital art world, that would also have a physical component, have an audio component, as well as a digital component. And I think that's where I was able to create my unique, trademark.
And you've definitely pushed that as a medium. Look, one of the things I want to talk about generally in this podcast, but also with you, is the concept of world building, because I think this is something that you do pretty much with all of your works. You can call them what you will, but they're very multidisciplinary.
It's actually funny that you mentioned that.
Yeah.
Because I've already built, like, my followers and fans and people that know me would know that I've created this world called Hexagonia.
Yeah.
Fans are called Hexagonians. There's all of these symbols. There are all of these characters. There's a comic book series.
And this is something you've been developing for the extent of your career, no?
Yeah, exactly. People we've been talking about, like, let's go to Hexagonia. Like, we've been talking about, like, for years. Like, people like hundreds and thousands of people have the logo tattooed somewhere on their body, some in their face or in their neck, and it's part of their life. It's part of the culture. It's you really have to understand what has been built. So the world has always existed inside of our minds. This is why these things, they tell a story. Every song, every video, every piece of art has been part of the journey. The world has been created, but it hasn't been created. But
Yeah.
for me, it started with the comic book series on Webtoon. Hundreds of thousands of people started reading that. The idea came from like, oh, let's actually build a world, but do we really like? It also is an antisocial aspect to it, right?
But also to what you're talking about, I think that we talk about this a lot sometimes with fashion brands or with, like really, really large companies. Once you've kind of hit all of the different marks in terms of the physical world, you kind of like hit a limit. Like you did the magazine, you did the music, you did the music videos, you did the TV. Then what, right? So I think one of the really cool things, as we're talking about world building for Hexagonia or just in general, the metaverse, that kind of removes some of the limits because, you're exploring what else can I do? Now that's kind of just opened up to what's possible. And now that can be pretty much anything. So I know that you've done so much and you've obviously explored the metaverse. A lot of your NFTs are multidimensional.
I built a metaverse. Yeah, I built a metaverse about 2 years ago.
A little early,
Yeah, and it's build a metaverse, build a meta-human. Really passionately, sort of like working really sort of day and night on that. And then I was like, okay, I built it, but I like to take my time. I don't want to rush things or like, here's my metaverse, do something with it. The same with some of the art that I was selling. I was there for a couple of years, right? Some things need time, and you need to sometimes you even need to see how other people are, how they trying to make the most out of it, to be very honest. Because at the end of the day, what is a metaverse?
Right.
For me now, I like to combine the idea of like, a lot of my friends and a lot of people around me, they're saying like NFTs are antisocial, right? Metaverse is something antisocial. For me, it's probably one of the most social things that you can have, right?
Yeah.
Because it actually does connect people, and people are afraid of it now. But I see it as one of my goals to take away the fear, and to make people familiar, and to make them feel, like it's not scary to ask questions. I have many questions. I am not. We're all just finding this. We're
Right.
all
Bleeding
just
edge.
figuring this whole thing out, right? So, but a lot of people are afraid. A lot of people that I come across are like, whenever the word NFT is involved, they're like, "Oh shit, now I hate it." Like, you don't hate it. It's just a way of sharing things with the world, things that we
How did
love.
you find that process with your audience? I'm curious because I know that a lot of your like you said, you had a world that you've built. A lot of people were right along there for the journey, and a lot of them were very into technology, techno music, whatever the case might be. How was that for them? How was that initial process?
I'm very lucky because I have very smart fans, and I'm very, they're very, very loyal as well. They're on the journey with me. I've always been, my whole concept is built around the future, right? My music sounds futuristic. My clothing looks futuristic. I work with Star Wars. I work with Google, United Nations on all of these futuristic projects. So it makes sense to them. Still, it fears them because they read all of this stuff. They see PFP projects that don't really make sense to them. Like, they're like, why would I pay X for a picture of an animal?
Whatever animal, yeah.
Yeah. So they were like, that to them is like, that has nothing to do with art. So then it kind of sets me back. But they understand my journey. And to me, there have been people that were like, I think they were afraid I was going to abandon music, right? Like, oh, you're just now making art for rich people.
Yeah.
No, I'm not. I've never made more music in my life. I've never been more dedicated to use whatever I'm getting now to make everything else better, to create
Right.
better music, to be happier, to make better videos. All of this kind of like is at your service. Like, music is free. Like,
Yeah.
people, you
Yeah.
understand the idea. This is why one of the things that I wanted to sell was a concert, Destination Hexagonia. The idea of everything being free on YouTube, on Spotify, like, I think we got
It like perverts that idea. It makes it seem like dirty or something, even though that's just you doing what you do for a living. Yeah.
To me, the art part was actually the sale of the piece was the art part. To me, it wasn't actually the actual piece. Almost, it was more like the idea of bringing back the concept of like, hey, what we're creating here has value. It's not a given that you can listen or watch everything for free. That's the world we live in now. But we have to find that's not normal. When I grew up, that wasn't normal. You couldn't go watch a concert of your favorite artist or listen to music for free. I'd have to save up to buy a CD.
It's also the scale of the work that you're creating, I believe. Also, again, going back historically, like if you look at any great artwork, that wasn't something that, was done for free. I mean, look at like the Sistine Chapel. I mean, it has to be commissioned by somebody, and it's extremely expensive to do anything at that kind of scale. So, I mean, maybe even just to bring it to a little bit of the present, you've done a lot of installations, you've been in art galleries, you've been in museums, but now I even see you taking over like screens of entire buildings and, taking these things to a whole new level. So, is that inherent to your practice, or is it something that you just keep getting bigger?
It kind of is. Sadly enough, I make it very hard on myself. Because I have thousands of video loops with audio attached to it that I could have sold on all of the all platforms. Could have made a couple of million, but that didn't feel challenging to me. To me, it's like I feel like, what part can I play in pushing things forward, and how can I, what Avenger can I be in this adventure?
What hasn't been done already?
What is my superpower that people will write about in 20 years from now, right? So that's the immediate thing. Like, everyone's like, okay, they're making videos, 6-7 seconds, loops, audio. Okay, fuck it, I'm gonna make a film of an hour, and I'm gonna make it for one person, And the idea is like, it can never, whatever you do, it can never be good enough, and people will be bored of it within 10 seconds. People don't have that attention span to appreciate what really is going on sometimes. So to me, it was like, sometimes it's better to not show it and to kind of present people the idea of what it would be in their mind. Same with the metaverse. Like now, I built 2 installations in China where you see glimpses, renders of the metaverse. I'm like, that makes you maybe appreciate just a moment, right? Rather than we look at movies, it's like it's 2 hours of just the craziest CGI.
Sensory overload.
Yeah. It's like, and then you look at an NFT, you're like, yeah, it's not Transformers, is it? It's not Star Wars, And I think that sometimes, we have to take a step back and just kind of like acknowledge, like, hey, it is, you have to look at it, or even the idea that you are not able to see it, that kind of sparks your interest. It makes it more sexy, right? That's kind of where I'm at, and also the idea of like making public art for other people. I hate selling things. I hate selling concert tickets. I hate selling music. I like creating, but I do want to reach people. I do want to share it with the world, and I want the best for my art on all levels. But I hate the idea of selling it. But for some reason, apparently, I've become pretty good at it.
And not bad. Yeah.
And I now notice, like, hey, it's maybe that is part of my art. Part of the art is being, if you look at it in a Warhol, it's like
business is the finest form of art.
And it's also is it about the art piece or is it about the artist? Do you want something from someone who has a history, who has a vision, who thinks big, who thinks disruptive, who has different thoughts? For me, I don't just want to be a guy who's in there like, oh, here's a loop, here's check it out, like it looks dope. Here's some sound that I put to it. Like, I know it's like, fuck, like let's take a huge risk. Let's invest a shitload of time and resources into creating this thing that we have no idea if we will ever sell it on the blockchain. Yeah. But that's, to me, it was about making a mark in the time where, we were writing history.
Totally. NFT Magazine, as we're here right now, we're really focused on the art. NFTs are the tech that facilitates it, but we're personally really focused on crypto art and how it's all developing. And I think one thing that's really inherent to your practice and a lot of artists' practice, but I think you wouldn't be you without it, is the storytelling. And yes, the world building, but really you're creating a narrative and you're perpetuating that narrative throughout every aspect of the process. And I feel like that's what you really enjoy doing. From your perspective, if we're thinking about what you're working on right now and what you've recently done, what's the biggest difference for you between creating that narrative for a single person versus showing something like what you're doing right now in China and doing something really public for mass audience?
A very good question, actually. I love creating something for one person. It sounds very weird because I've always had the pressure. Sometimes you're
mass market.
Yeah, no, well, yeah, exactly. You're like, oh, your single only streamed 50 million. Like, that's, what are we gonna do to make it better next time? I'm like, 50 million is not bad.
Good. That's pretty good.
Yeah, like my album has like over 600 million streams now, so that shouldn't be disregarded. But
yeah. Do we really have to keep going?
But there's always a bigger dog. It's like, but it isn't, Drake had so and so. Like, yeah, but I'm not Drake, am I? Yeah. So then you strip it back and you're like, no, can I create something for one person that one person would appreciate? It felt really liberating. Because sometimes I would look at this giant stage, there's like, 40, 50,000 people in front of me. I'm like, it's a little bit daunting, right? Sometimes I look at one person in the crowd. The whole show, I'm like, I'm looking at that one person. Is that person having a good time?
Yeah.
And for me, that is what this whole thing became. It's like, can I create something that one person would appreciate? And it was very liberating.
I feel like if you're focusing on that one person, not to interrupt you, but I feel like you're really focusing on yourself. Going back to what you said at the beginning,
exactly.
That 13-year-old you, creating for yourself.
Exactly, that is it. Because when I started, like, it was horrible what I did. Some of the things maybe other people might still find horrible, but definitely was horrible then. And I didn't know what I was doing. I was like 13, and I was, I released my first record then, and looking back on it, like, there was no guidance. Like, we had no idea. It was, we were creating genres and music. I think for me, when music started popping up was when I let go of everything. It was when my dad passed away. We had this conversation, and after that, I started thinking about the concept of time, how precious time is. That is the most valuable thing, and I started to live in the future. It's like, what would music in the future sound like? I started to create my version of Future House, where this futuristic electronic music, I was thinking, like, what would it sound like in 20 years from now? And rather than having a hit single, it started a movement, and from there on, you had all the big pop stars kind of like, hey, from, anyone from Rihanna to Coldplay to Bieber to like say, hey, we want a remix of that sound. And that vehicle ended up bringing me to the masses. And I think I didn't know that was going to happen. I wasn't seeking success. I was trying to create something new from that, being that kid, that 13-year-old kid that was like thinking like, what would the future look like? Can I be a part of it? And I think that really sparked the movement that kind of flowed into art and fashion and cinematography. And I'm lucky. I feel very blessed because I know a lot of guys out there, even in my shoes, they're like, who am I? What's my unique stamp in this world? What can I create? For me, it was like I didn't name my fans Hexagonians. They did that, you know? For me, the symbol stands for something, and you're right, the way I write things, the way things look, they have my own mark.
Yeah.
If you dive into the world, you see it, right? And I actually feel blessed about that now because I'm not aiming at having, you know, a hit single or you know, creating X, Y, Z. But
It's
the
like
one
liberating.
thing, it's liberating. But at the same time, in the world of art, I experienced something that I didn't experience in the world of music. I had the wind in my back because it was always an uphill battle for me for over 20 years. Like no support on the radio, no promoter was booking me. You know, no colleague was playing my music, nothing. You know,
You have to push for it all yourself.
I had to push so hard. I had no label. I had no management. It took me 20 years to get to a decent position where, in all those years in between, people were like, see, the line between successful or even genius and madness is
You're
the
going
line is
almost back and forth.
the line is success, because once you cross that line, it's like it goes from like, oh, I guess he isn't crazy after all. But to live below that one line for so many years, you do actually go fucking crazy, right? And you have to be a little bit crazy, you know. And I think, you know, that to me is like, it felt so great because I felt like I was supported by the community, by the NFT community, and I felt like, you know, things went so fast. And now it's like, I'm in Venice at the Biennale, or you know, we're selling this crazy piece at Art Basel in Miami, or I have these crazy public installations in the city center of China and Hong Kong. And
Or when they put you on a poster with like Andy Warhol and Basquiat. Yeah.
Exactly. And people are like they're giving you that credits all of a sudden, and they're giving you pats on the back, and they're giving you opportunities that, you know, others would have, you know, be like, that will never happen to me. And I was like, wow, this is what it feels like to have the wind in your back.
Thanks, guys.
And feel blessed, like, holy shit. The hard part is to enjoy that. Yeah. And I'm like, fuck you, Don.
Allowing yourself to enjoy it.
Yeah, fuck you, Don. Why don't you do that? Like, I'm already onto like, I'm like, nah, this is probably a film where I'm like, you know, this is the Truman Show. They'll probably take it away from me. And
You
be
wake
like,
up, you're 17 again. Yeah.
Yeah, you're nobody, you know, like, you suck. But I feel like, to me, art and success, it doesn't come where you have to bleed. You know, sometimes people ask me, like, how do you become successful? Or, like, I don't know, do you have a private life? Yes. Okay, well, stop. Don't have a private life. Work 19 hours a day, sleep 2-3 hours, and fucking believe in something relentlessly and work
Bleed
on that.
through the eyes for it. And,
Yeah, like, literally fucking, like, don't, like, I haven't been on a holiday for, like, over 10, 20 years maybe even. Like, it stresses me out because it means I lose a day where I can create and where I can be, you know,
you know, we're coming towards our end, but I want to talk about that for a moment because I think the creative process is really important to a lot of people who are listening here. For you, you know, touring every day for so many years, year round. You know, that's something we talk a lot about with artists here is, you know, the necessity of, you know, novel time or like novel idea time. Do you find that now, I guess, there's more space for you to do whatever you want? You have more time? Like, I don't know, is it on a plane for you? Do you take time actually to sit and ideate? Like, when does that, you know, idea time come for you?
You're right. Well, I mean, for me now, there's less pressure. The things that I do now, also within music, I do them because I would have a relationship with the promoter. I know there's going to be a lot of fans there, but there's no pressure anymore, and I say no a lot. Funny thing is, if you're listening right now, when you start saying no, people start saying yes. It's like when you're not, when you're in a position that allows you to, you know, to have that freedom, a lot more is going to come to you. It's crazy, you know, like all of a sudden, all of these things started happening in music as well that was never possible before that. But now it's like, okay, because you say no, like, why not no? Why no?
Yeah.
People started upping, all of the stakes. I was like, oh, this is great. Like an agent, my man, like they were all like, whoa, you're saying no to this. This is what you dreamed of your whole life. I'm like, it's not anymore now. I need time to think. I need time to create. We're at the dawn of something really revolutionary.
So you are protecting some of your time to just work on, I guess, it's this fine line between work and play, I suppose. Right?
No, 100%. Yeah. My idea now is like, hey, cool, I can fly, to do one show in Brazil in the weekend, but because I love to see my fans and that's what I do for them. But at the same time, I could also be there thinking about this new concept or this new world that I'm building, or, my work at the moment is like exactly what I'm doing right now. I want my work to be shown in museums and not just kind of just float by fleety, like for in front of people who are like will be forgetting about it the next week. For me, that takes time.
Yeah,
and it takes brain capacity
and intention.
Yeah, and it's hard. It's really hard. It's so hard to say no, and now all of a sudden everything comes your way, and it's like, fuck, and I have to say no to things now that I dreamt of my whole life.
In those kinds of moments, like let's say this China example, do you start with that end goal in sight and reverse engineer it, or do you start from a certain point and end up with that massive piece?
Yeah. There's ideas that are alive in my head, but obviously I need facilitators. In this case, Sotheby's, they've been amazing. For me, they really believed in me as a fine art artist. They were like, hey, there hasn't been really in their eyes, and we had this discussion in another podcast. They were like that, they were saying there hasn't been a musician that made a crossover that smoothly from music into fine art.
Yeah,
on that level, right? Going into museums and the biggest art fairs.
I can't think of one. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, wow, that to me is maybe who I'm supposed to be. That is the opportunity that I'm given. So I need to be respectful of that, and I need to work on that. And also, like, I take it one step at a time. People are like, "What's your next thing? What's?" I think you're also
the dreaded question. What's next? Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's the pressure of doing a lot, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people are like, "Oh, at the moment now."
And you do put it on yourself a little bit because you do a lot. Yeah.
I do a lot, but when it comes to my art, when it comes to my NFTs or whatever digital art or creative work in the art world. I take it one step at a time. I'm not in a hurry. I'm going to do this till I die. Right?
You'd rather do it in 2 years and better than do it right now.
Yeah, I'd rather just create this thing that like now in China I have something that I'm really proud of, and I really want the museum to know that I put my all into it, from start to finish, and rather than like being like 8 projects at the same time, I have a team who, do all the work. I just say like, oh, that sounds great. It comes from me. That's what artistry is about. It has to come from you, and I think people know. When the same goes for music, people know that I've created my own sound. Even if people will copy it, or even now,
it's you.
Yeah, even if I would work with other engineers now, it'd be like it's his sound, right? And the same for me goes with the art that I do. You have to have your stamp, so it has to come from you. Of course, I could be in 25 different projects. But I've learned from that, like, hey, it's fine to do something really well and then have a bit of space, move on to the next thing. If I do 1 or 2 big projects a year, like I did in China and Hong Kong now, it's great. But you can't do it all at the same time and expect it to be at a certain level,
right?
Unless you have other people do it for you the whole time.
Yeah, you look at the people who are producing at that scale. They have teams of like 100 people, like making the things. Yeah,
yeah. But bear in mind, I want to get to that point. Yeah. But I want to make like the same with music. Like before I was here, I made dozens of records that had my sound in it. So now I could, anyone could be making it for me.
Right.
But
so you chose to be the cook.
Yeah,
in the
exactly.
In the process,
so that is where I'm now. It needs to be clear who I am, and not just like, oh, he's a musician. So you made. Sometimes I'm standing there in a museum or at an exposition, and they're like, oh, so you made the audio? I was like, no, I did
everything.
I did the whole thing. But I think the concept of a person creating, a 360 piece of art, and that's what I was talking about with Sotheby's as well. They were like, Don, you should actually implement your music even more, because we have the opportunity to put music in a position where painting, sculptures, and all of these other creative, disciplines have been at for years. I felt like I've painted with sounds,
Yeah.
it's a collage of sound. I sit behind my computer, and it's lines that turn into one piece that create a world that.
Well,
you-
even when
you
I
pull
saw
into-
the collaboration with you and Drift in the Biennale the last time we saw each other, I mean, like one of the times I went, I just closed my eyes and listened because it was so. It is a world that you build when you do these,
Right.
multidisciplinary pieces.
Yeah, I think exactly that is where I want sound and music and audio to go to. Why not have a museum one day where you're not looking at things, you're just listening. Just close your eyes. Because when I look at a painting, when I was young, I would go to the big museums and be like, okay, great, it's a white canvas with a black spot in the middle. Who cares? I didn't understand abstract or modern art. Now I'm like, okay, this is the story of the artist. This is the history of the piece. Now I'm like, okay, I understand art, but it takes time, and I think, to me, that's a dream, and I want to work on it. Could we create a museum one day where we're not looking at things, we're listening, and maybe it's completely in the dark. Oh shit, maybe I'm giving away an idea. Actually, but to me, that's what it is. It's not about me taking credit for anything. Don't do that. It's about there's always enough ideas. Like I've had people copy and steal ideas from me. I'm every day I wake up, there's a problem. Every day I wake up, there are people trying to fuck shit up for me. That is part of who I am. That's part. Like I think the biggest success I've ever had is I'm still here, I'm still alive, and I'm still optimistic. I still believe in humanity, despite me waking up and constantly being surrounded with people trying to fuck my shit up, or trying to pull me down, or trying to disregard or discredit. It's the hardest part as an artist, especially now. All of us here in this NFT space, we're like, people want to disregard what we're doing here, right?
Yeah.
They're like, oh, it's not real art, it's not real, it's monopoly money, it's monopoly art.
All the
You know?
fun. All the
Yeah,
fun.
exactly.
Yeah.
So it is real. We're just getting started. It is revolution, and we just happen to call it NFT, but we could have given it any other name.
Exactly.
It's a
The name's not
vehicle.
important. Yeah.
It's a vehicle, and it's a vehicle to transport us into a better future.
Fabulous. I have one last question for you, Don. Kind of going back to, again, where you were and where you are now. You've always regarded a global audience, or, you've been working towards and have built a global audience. In the NFT space, it's very decentralized, and this is something inherent to the space. And you already had a fan base that was, quite decentralized all over the world, as you were saying. I'm curious for you, as we've talked about in this chat today. China, Italy, the States, all these different worlds, markets, mentalities. Do you find that in the NFT space, there's this cohesivity of a shared idea, or do you still find yourself in some way catering to different worlds, I suppose, in the goal of building your world?
No, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I think we're creating a world where we all have the same idea. We all have the same vision, which has been very hard, because how can I create something that works for everyone, for all of these different cultures all around the world? It's because we're not dependent on geography, travel, or position in the world anymore. We're dependent on our mind state. And we've now created a world, a place where we're all in the same mind state. To me, it's not about what you look like, or what your sex is, or how old you are. It's about your spirit animal. It's about your mind state. And to me, having that audience, it's beyond global. It's universal, right?
Yeah, they
That
can live on
blows my
Mars
mind.
and still access it. Yeah.
Yeah, that blows my mind, and that gives me a humongous sense of responsibility. I don't want to take it lightly. I'm here for the long run. I don't, this is why I didn't launch my coin back then, because, again, we're building a community that goes way beyond anything financial, anything technical, or even anything creative. This we're creating a new sort of way to connect humanity, and I think that's incredible. And I so hope that everyone in this, that's not in this space, actually sees that. And it's hard for us to translate that sometimes, because people look at things super on the nose, right? But you have to zoom out. You have to have the helicopter view. And I feel like, we're out here trying to make the world a better place. I see, like, when I talk to Mike, or like, people, or like Mad Dog Jones or any of the other creatives, Fuck Render, Victor Mosquera, all of these guys, all different disciplines. We're all. It feels like we're like FIBO, like we're Avengers. We all have our own superpower. We all come from completely different backgrounds, different ages, everything about us is completely different. But we are in this together, trying to create something that wasn't there before. And almost like, I feel like I'm part of this group where I'm inspired by people, which has been a long time, because I wasn't, even in music, sometimes I'm like, people like to copy, like it's like it's not inspirational. And now I'm like, it's so great to see someone like people be so successful. Like, we did something 3 or 4 years ago. If you zoom in on the 5,000 Everydays, there's a picture of me in there.
Yeah.
And I'm incredibly proud of that, because it feels like I'm a part of history, and I feel like, all those years ago, I was like, I already saw the potential and the talent that he had, and I'm so happy that millions of other people see it now, and he's validated in that way. And I think that is the real revolution. It's not about people. It's not about Don Diablo. It's not about all of the big names. It's about all of the smaller names that now have the opportunity to make a living with something that makes them happy. If you can make a living with a few $1,000s that can change your life. You don't have to answer to a boss anymore that makes you depressed. You don't have to work at an advertisement company.
In developing countries, you sell one NFT, or you're set for for months at a time.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and I think that is, and the same for me. Like I like on some of the pieces we've created. I'm working with this concept, this charity, global charity that we have. It's called Just Dig It. It's there's good that you can do with NFTs. Like we donated over 100,000 on one of my last pieces to regreen a big part of land in Africa. We'll have a drone video. It flies over it. We'll post it very soon. It'd be like, hey, by selling this NFT, all of these farmers out there in Africa now, we were changing their life, and we're actually making the world a better place. Look beyond, mining
Or the sensationalism even. Of
the sensationalism.
sales.
Obviously, we always want to put things down, but we have to think bigger than that. We have to show the world we can do great things, even for the environment, shockingly enough, but also like for the creative world and for humanity. For people who've been, fucking depressed for so many years, unhappy, and all of a sudden, they can sell something for $50.
From their bedroom.
From their bedroom, and it can create happiness. It gives them a connection to the world where they don't feel useless anymore, which brings me back to the very first video that I made for a track called Useless. That track was called Useless because I felt useless in this world. I was like, I have no use. Who the fuck am I on this giant planet? And all of a sudden, millions of people have the opportunity to be heard, to be a part of society where they felt like left out for most of their lives. And that, to me, is the beauty of this whole thing. And I think, I hope more people will join the revolution.
Fabulous. That's a very full circle note to end on. I love it.
Yes. It's too short, man. I feel like we can talk for like 3 more hours.
Obviously.
Yeah.
No, I love it. Look, Don, I'm such a fan. You're a friend. I so believe in what you're doing, and I'm really excited to see it just continue to explode all over the world. Just for anybody who's listening who may not be familiar, where can they go and check out your work right now?
You can go to dondiablo.com/NFT.
Boom.
Or think hexagon-art.com. Some of my work is there. Or if you like music, go to Spotify, go to YouTube, type it in. I'm there. Go to my Instagram. Some stuff is there. Or otherwise, try to find me on the street. Give me a hug. And let's do a little dance.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be here. It's such a pleasure. We hope to see you again. And as always, this is NFT Magazine, crypto art for culture. So happy to have you all here. Appreciate you. We'll see you in the next episode.